Turn to number 9 on the agenda, our rulemaking section, and we have Katie leading us through this today.
I want to check, Ian, are you online? You want to turn your camera on if you're here? We're gonna just switch it up. Ian Caldwell, do you want to come up? And we're gonna go slightly out of order. If you're okay with that.
He's always ready.
I'm just gonna swap the schedule around. Okay.
Thank you. Chair Hill, Director of Assumption, members of the commission. My name is Ian Caldwell. I'm the ATV coordinator for Oregon State Parks. I'm based out of the Mountain Region office and in the Bend office. So today we're going to talk about sound making, sound rules, and equipment standards for all-terrain vehicles.
So this is item B.
So just a little background. In 1986, there was a legislative action that created the ATV Fund program. And so ATV stickers are sold to the user for $10, and we get actually about $100 of fuel taxes for each sticker. So that's the way we count the vehicles and do that. So ODOT was in charge of that program from 86 to 2000. That program transferred over to Oregon State Parks in 2000. So we had the permit sales that we do, we have grant program, and we also have a safety education program that we do. But over the years, we have an ATV advisory committee, and one of the topics that they've talked a lot about is looking at the sound level and trying to reduce some of that sound level to be good neighbors in some of these riding areas. So what ended up happening is Oregon Motorcycle Riders Association, they're a racing organization of motorcycles throughout the state of Oregon. They actually brought this idea to state legislator and proposed, wanted to transfer the rulemaking authority from DEQ over to state parks, and the intent to lower that. So that was House Bill 2232. That actually passed through the legislative hearings pretty quickly and got signed by the governor. Share? Okay. I don't know how to do that. All right, so House Bill 2232 got signed by the governor pretty early on. In April, Katie was here and she had temporary rules that we had the ability to write temporary rules for 180 days. But then after that, we have to create more public rules that go through the public process. So, so over July and August, we worked on going through that rulemaking progress. The proposed rule changes that we have, basically what we took is what ODOT had and what DEQ had, and those were the temporary rules. And so for the rulemaking process, we had those rules for the last 35 years. We're like, well, let's just keep those and look and make some adjustments. So there's kind of 3 buckets. I view them as the definitions, and that's 0015. The equipment standards, which used to be ODOT rules, that's 10150. So 150, it's kind of like confusing, the 15 and 150. Those are the 2 different sections. And then sound levels is 0160, and that's the sound level. So the first one, the definitions, that's basically, we didn't make any changes. We had to do some word changes, like the ODOT uses the term multi-wheeled motorized vehicle, which is basically a quad or a 4-wheeler. We call that a class 1 ATV. So we made those definitions fit what we needed to. Some of that has to do with like which vehicles have to have a roll cage, which vehicles have to have a fire extinguisher. So that's all staying the same. The equipment standards, that was with the from ODOT's old rules. So we went through those and really questioned like, how does everything work? Is everything working okay? But I started looking into flags. Flags are required in Oregon when you're operating on sand dunes. And what Oregon law says, it needs to be 8 inches tall. So an orange flag like this, 8 inches this way, 12 inches this way. This is a little bit larger than a normal flag. And then, but I looked at the surrounding states, California, Nevada, Idaho, Arizona, and Washington. All those states, their flag requirement is to be 6 inches tall across this way. And we had been saying they need to be 9 feet tall, and the other states are all saying 8 foot tall. So we proposed that in the rulemaking changes. Everybody was okay with that, law enforcement, different people. So that's just, we're being more consistent with the surrounding states, and they were just mostly concerned about seeing that color. Another thing we clarified is that if you have a flag, it has to have 36 square inches in it. So a lot of people are running American flags like this. And I checked with every county and all the law enforcement officers, they all allow American flags. But basically what we said is it has to have 36 square inches of red on it. And so this flag right here is 12 inches long, which that's the length you need to have. And this one's actually 8 inches when you do the ratio. And 40% of the red is the color of the flag is color red. So this works out to be 38 inches, and we said you have to have a minimum of 36 inches. So that just helps clarify, like if you have a country flag, it has to have that much color in it. So a couple other things, headlights, snowmobiles, it's in statute that snowmobiles have to have their headlights on during operation. Sometimes ATVs, sometimes they put tracks on them and stuff. They are not required to have headlights. Law enforcement brought that up to me as an issue of being able to see people in the snow. So we made that required for all vehicles operating in the snow. And then the Snowmobile Association, we had a representative from them on our rulemaking advisory, and he mentioned having tethers for a snowmobile. So like if you were to fall off the snowmobile, you have a lanyard attached to a kill switch and it'll shut off the motor. And there's been some accidents where that motor kept running and injured people. So I looked at the Marine Board program. The Marine Board requires tethers to be attached to the person or the clothing. And so I use the same language from the Marine Board to for the tethers. So, but what we're really here to talk about is the sound levels. And so there's 2 elements of the sound levels. We kind of have a mixture of different levels in Oregon. The DEQ, kind of a long time ago, it was just 99 for motorcycles, and 3-wheelers were considered a motorcycle, and everything was just sort of 97. As we dug into a little bit more, the quads and side-by-sides are at 97 decibels. But we've been seeing a lot of, like, especially the side-by-sides, people are modifying their vehicles, and those things are getting louder and louder. So we looked at a lot of different states. There's 10 other states that have the 96 decibel level. California, Idaho, and Nevada are all at 96. And there's a lot of case studies out there that show that 96 is a level that people can get their vehicles to that sound level, and it's not too much of a hardship. Most of the vehicles, if they come stock and they're louder than that, those are motocross machines. So they're designed for a closed course track. Those vehicles, they're not going to have a spark arrestor on their muffler. So just to go out in the woods, they have to get a different pipe. And so they just need to make sure that they have a spark arrestor and it meets that 96 decibel level. So the other element we looked at was unreasonable noise. And this is one of the issues that the law enforcement officers have during enforcement, is that a vehicle, to be able to do the 96 decibel checking of that can be difficult. Sometimes they don't have a sound meter on them because the officers are out in the dunes riding on an ATV and they just don't have room to carry that thing. Sometimes weather, like high wind or rain, prevents them. And then there's sometimes issues with getting consent to do a sound test from a rider. So if those situations occur, the officer would use his judgment based on his training, and they can cite for unreasonable noise. The unreasonable noise is a rule that's on roads right now. Any place that's a roadway, an officer can cite for unreasonable noise. In the sand dunes, there's actually sand roads out there. Those are considered a highway, and that they can cite on there, but that's not where people are opening the motors up really loud. It's climbing up a sand dune that the vehicles are really loud. So that just gives the officers one more tool. It's like reckless driving. That is a thing that the officer uses his discretion, and he has to explain to the judge how the person was doing reckless driving or how that sound was unreasonably loud. So we did some of the public comments. We got a lot of concerns about law enforcement and who's doing the law enforcement and if we have stuff for that. So Oregon State Parks, we're not doing law enforcement. Our commission officers aren't managing the lands that are open to that, and they're not writing citations. So the citations and the enforcement and the education would be with the county sheriff's offices, Oregon State Police, and the Forest Service. So in Oregon, we have grant agreements with 16 different county sheriff's offices throughout the state. So we have everything on the coastal dunes and Eastern Oregon kind of scattered out to the main riding areas. So we also have an agreement with Oregon State Police. I think there was a informational thing at our last meeting about doing a transfer to Oregon State Police. So we fund the equivalent of 2 full-time employees. Those 2 employees or actually they just do different duties, but we look at the hours, and the state troopers, the wildlife division, has about 120 officers, and those 120 officers can divide that time up to if they're going to do a couple hours here, a couple hours there. So that's how we provide funding for state troopers. I did mention most of the sound focus is in the dunes. That's where we've been getting complaints. We've been recently hearing complaints in the Sand Lake area, and then also in the Coos Bay area. We've had some residents kind of keep bringing these issues up to us. So I calculate the number of hours that we have in the coastal dunes of patrols. We have 35,000 hours of time dedicated in this biennium for a 2-year period of time. That's officers on the ground, on ATVs and side-by-sides doing patrols. Our grant program overall for all of our law enforcement across the state is $6 million that we provide funding for law enforcement. So it is an important thing. We need to keep people playing by the rules, but they also keep the riding areas much safer. So Tillamook County, Lane County, Douglas County, and Coos County, those are our big riding areas, the dunes riding areas, and that's where we actually have the most officers on duty and spend the most amount of dollars. Something kind of proud of is we have a thing we call law enforcement tracking system. And so we worked kind of copied what the Marine Board program has. And so at the end of the day, the officers come back, they enter the hours that they did patrolling, like they were on a vehicle, they were in a truck or something like that. But they collect the statistics of like how many sound checks they have at the end of the day, how many citations, if there's an incident. So we can use that information to track stuff. So I pulled some numbers for our sound checks that have been occurring. I went for a 5-year period of time. So I went from 2015 to 2019. We had over 900 sound checks during that time period. So a lot of that was courtesy sound checks, getting people compliant with stuff. So after COVID, from 2020 to 2025, our numbers went down drastically. Obviously, when we were in COVID, people weren't making as much contact. They were just, kind of keeping it at arm's length. So sound checks really dropped off the radar. And there were some issues with some of the getting consent for vehicles. So a lot of that just dropped off. So we want to get back into a position. We saw the noise levels increasing and going up over those years too, because people weren't being checked and it wasn't a big issue. We want to switch that around. We want to, advertise we've got a 96 decibel level and that the officers has the tools to do those jobs. So the other thing I'm pretty proud of that we do is we do a officer training. So every 2 years, we've been doing it out at Eagle Crest in Central Oregon, and we bring all the law enforcement officers together. We actually partner with Deschutes County. So the Deschutes County Sheriff's Office, they're the ones teaching officers laws and how to deal with situations and stuff. And State Parks acts more as a facilitator to bring everybody together. But in those trainings, we actually have an expert out of California. He's the guru of the sound stuff. And so we consulted him a lot through this whole process, but we bring him up, we have him on contract. And so he comes up and he'll teach officers and they get certified to do those sound tests. So I did want to kind of show you what we do for sound meter testing. So the sound meter is, these are the sound meters we have, about $1,500 to $2,000. We bought like 60 of these and we distribute them to all the different law enforcement agencies all over the state. So the officers have these devices. We put a little cap on here. What you do is you measure 20 inches from the tailpipe and it's 45 degrees from the muffler and kind of hold it off to the side. Somebody needs to rev the engine up. It goes to half RPM. We have this thing's kind of simple, but it actually really works. It has a little wire. And when you set what the RPM is supposed to be, and this little wire like goes rotating around. So they'll have a book with all the different types of vehicles and they know the exact RPM that the vehicle needs to do. So the officers has that tool and they can use that. So our timeline, we went through the rulemaking process and over August, we had open public comment. Katie will talk about that here in a second. But if this goes into place and you guys pass this, then some of the steps that we will be taking is, one, we have a website, so we'd update that immediately. We would also email, we have a lot of contacts for our law enforcement programs and our operation and maintenance that we provide ongoing funds for. So we'll bring them up to speed on that. Another thing we have is we produce this ATV guide, and we actually do a Spanish version of this too. So we hand these out to all the land managers in both English and Spanish. So we're going to be working on updating that over the winter. And then our law enforcement workshop, we're going to have another one of those in April, and that will be in Coos Bay. And we'll bring in Chris Reel up from California to teach the officers that also. So with that, I'll turn over to Katie to talk about the public comments.
Great. So on the previous slide, you saw that the public comment period was open through the month of August. We did do a rule advisory committee in July to help determine what the proposed rules were going to be. We had recreationists, law enforcement, and safe individuals who were neighbors of riding areas involved in helping to propose the draft rules that we then received public comment on. We had 18 total public comments, and we did have an online public hearing as well. We didn't get any oral public comments, but they were all written comments. The biggest concern were around noise, which two large concerns, noise, and then who was going to enforce these elements. There was general support for the changes, but concern with these restrictions sound fine. How are we going to enforce them? So I think as Ian described, a lot of it is the education about how enforcement works and ensuring that there are enforcement standards and enforcement available. There were some concerns around safety and making sure that there's just general safety for ATV use. And then some thoughts about permits and fee systems that were really outside the scope of what this specific rulemaking would look like. And then general questions about the role that OPRD plays with ATV. As Ian described the program, it's a little bit unique because we don't manage riding areas and we don't do the specific enforcement. So the education about our role in ATV management is going to be an ongoing process. Do you want to go to the next slide? So with that, our request is for you to adopt the proposed rules as they're presented in your packet. Unless you have questions, we're both here to address the questions.
Yes, go ahead, Commissioner Cribbins.
I just wanted to say I appreciate you doing this work. As you know, and you saw from the numbers, the noise issue has been a contentious issue in Coos County. And part of the ongoing discussion from the sheriff's office has been, we don't necessarily have the rules we need in place to be able to enforce these. So much appreciated. Thanks.
And I spoke directly with Coos County on that and that ability, and they said that unreasonable noise works perfect for them. They can deal with that situation there.
Yeah, it's a very, it's an issue that Commissioner Sweet feels very strongly about. So if we pass this, I will give him the news and he'll be very happy.
That's great. Any other questions or comments for Ian or Katie? Ian, thank you for all your work on this and just even the flag presentation and like the in-depth information that you know and on the ground connections and relationships are so valuable and important. And it's just a testament to the amount of above and beyond work that our staff does to really connect with the communities and make sure that everybody's comfortable with rulemakings and other things as we go forward. So thank you. If there's no more questions, I would entertain a motion on this rulemaking, and I'll say the exact words so that nobody else has to. Adopt, let's see, the request of the commission is to adopt 736-004-0015, comma 0150 and 736-004-0160 as presented to enact sound and safety equipment standards for ATVs. Can I get a motion on that one?
So moved.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Condor. Can I get a second? Second. Commissioner Izumi with the second. All those in favor of adoption signify by saying aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? Hearing no opposition, it's approved. Thank you. Thank you for all your work. All right, Katie, are we back to the special assessment of this?
Yes, we'll move back to agenda item 9A.
Okay.
And so, Chair Hill, Director Solution, members of the commission, Katie Gauthier here with agenda item 9A. And with me, I have Ian Johnson. I'm loading.
Take two.
Ian, do you want to say anything?
Yeah, I'm here.
Great. So this is also the request to adopt. You will remember that we came to you in June with a request to open. Background on this, this is a special assessment for historic properties, 10-year property tax exemption for properties that are listed on the National Register of Historic Places. With the passage of House Bill 3190, we need to change our rules because of changes in the statute. The legislation allows for a second 10-year term. The current program allowed for two 10-year terms. The current, with 3190, they will allow for additional terms as long as the applicant has qualifying projects. The current program closed in July of 2024. So once the current participants ended their program, then they were not allowed to reapply. When 3190 passed, it does limit the participation to commercial income producing historic properties. There were questions when we did opening about residential properties that were income producing. And the question that came up then were about like Airbnb properties. They have to be based on statute, and Ian, correct me if I don't get this right. They have to be solely, completely income producing. So they can't be part of the year on Airbnb and then part of the year residential properties. They would have to be a continual income producing property in order to qualify. Anything to add with that one, Ian?
The only thing I would add is the rule also specifies that a property owner must be in compliance with all local zoning laws, rules, and ordinances. So if a local community approves that type of use and the property is 100% income producing, they would be able to take advantage of this program.
So the statute goes into effect September 26th. We would open, if these rules are adopted, we would open applications for this program beginning November 1st. The initial rules were reviewed by industry partners. We sought review from tribes and other interest groups. Public comment was open from July 1st through the 31st. We held a virtual public hearing. We did receive 5 written public comments and 1 oral public comment. The comments were generally neutral or favorable. We did have a few constructive comments from some partners that were incorporated, and I'm going to let Ian talk about the details of how we incorporated the edits from the comments.
Good afternoon, everyone. For the record, again, my name is Ian Johnson. I am the Deputy State Historic Preservation Officer, and I'll just kind of be addressing some of the comments we received. So as Katie said, they were generally supportive and constructive. The City of Portland did raise 2 important concerns for local government participation in the program. And at the request of the City of Portland, we did expand the definition of local landmark commission to include delegated staff acting on behalf of the governing body or the local landmark commission. And we made references to local landmark commission and governing body consistent throughout the document. The city also requested separating the special assessment program from local land use approvals, noting the processes are sometimes incompatible. The revised rule now clarifies the roles of local governments, allowing them to waive their opportunity to review work on behalf of the SHPO if they make this request in writing. Staff also added language to clearly describe the SHPO's role in reviewing local land use actions and the property owner's responsibilities for permits. Those 3 changes, we believe, mostly address a lot of the city's concerns as we were able to do it within the rule. We also, other revisions include clarifying the period the SHPO will accept applications response to a request by the Department of Revenue, and insertion of clear language describing when the owner must pay the program participation fee. We also clarified owner responsibilities as well, including providing reports to the SHPO, keeping owner contact information up to date with our office, and how to make amendments to the required preservation plan, among other provisions. Finally, we just did a general cleanup, removing outdated provisions that no longer applied. We did receive some comments expressing concern about potential abuse of the program. These were not addressed because the law and rule includes significant safeguards against abuse, such as required regular reporting and compliance reviews. The revisions are described in greater detail in the brief submitted for this hearing. And I can take any questions if there's any questions about the revisions.
With that, we are open to questions, or the request is to adopt as you have in your packet.
Any questions on this one? Seems pretty straightforward. All right, I would take a motion to adopt proposed changes for OAR 736-050-0001 to 736-050-0140 to update special assessment of historic property rules to reflect changes in HB 3190. So moved. Thank you, Commissioner Azumi. Can I get a second?
Second?
Thank you, Commissioner Perullo. All those in favor of adoption signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. Hearing no opposition, so approved. Thank you, Katie and Ian. Thank you.
Thank you.
One final rule to go. So
For last.
Chair Hill, Director Sumption, members of the commission, Katie Gauthier here with agenda item 9C. This is a request to adopt the public contracting and procurement rule changes. And we also brought this one to you in June, and it is a change based on the passage of Senate Bill 838, exempting the agency from the public contracting code. As we have shared, that the agency is a 24/7 hospitality agency with properties across the state, and the public contracting code did not work for many of our projects and properties. So the proposed rules will allow us to better fit within this confines of making sure that we do procurement in a very transparent and accountable way, but reflecting the needs of the agency. Sure, I get this. So some of the current challenges, and we've talked about a lot of these, that it's difficult to work with some of the small businesses in rural areas. During the legislative session, we had some great testimony from a tree faller in Florence who thought that we were mad at him when we stopped contacting him because he didn't do computers, and the park ended up paying a lot more to work with somebody from further away. And would be happy to work with our park if we have the ability. Or we had a sanitation company that didn't get a bid, but then was asked to subcontract to provide the same service at a less cost for them, or they would receive less money, but we were charged more. So this will allow us to, again, work with the contractors who can service our park and provide the service level that we need. The proposed rules, we want to make sure that we are following the utmost of transparency and accountability, and want to make it clear that this is not about seeking any semi-independent status, that we will still have oversight from the legislature and accountability with the public. Within the statute, there is an exemption where we are still must comply with the public contracting code for surplus property, IT, GIS mapping, and telecommunications. For IT projects, we will still go through the Department of Administrative Services Enterprise Service Investment, or DAS EIS process for Enterprise Service Oversight process for IT projects. So that's how we will comply with the IT projects. The proposed rules provide that transparency and accountability and continued legal review from DOJ as well. So what we did is we had administrative rules regarding procurement. Many of them hadn't been changed as we had moved to the online e-procurement processes through Oregon Buys, so they needed significant updates. The new proposed rules would exempt the agency from the public contracting code with the exceptions that we've talked about. They define the different thresholds for the different types of procurement processes with the types of requirements that we have. And then they articulate the ethics that staff will have to follow and how we're going to be accessible to the public and to vendors who would like to participate. And we are proposing repealing divisions 148 and 149 because they were outdated to begin with. Just a little bit about the timeline as a reminder of how we got here. Senate Bill 838 passed in June, and you approved opening public comment at the commission meeting in June. Public comment was opened for the month of July. We did an online public hearing and made additional changes to the proposed rules. Our staff also reviewed these proposed rules along with a manual that we have for staff to review so that we make sure that they are understanding what the new requirements are going to be for them. And we've had DOJ review of the rules. We are here in September where we're asking you to approve the proposed rules, and we'll begin staff training so that our staff are ready to start implementing beginning October 1st. We have, and I'll talk a little bit about our implementation plan. We do have an external website that's ready to go so that vendors who are interested in working with us can sign up, because we will still need to do due diligence to make sure that they have appropriate insurance and are registered with the Secretary of State as businesses, and that we can advertise business opportunities and provide opportunities for businesses who are interested in working with OPRD. So we have the external website ready to go. We have an internal FAQ and information for our staff so that they are well equipped to follow all of the requirements and ensure that we're completely accountable to a public process. And all of our staff who do contracting are still required to follow the contract administrator training by the Department of Administrative Services. So that's a lot. If there are questions, please ask them, or our request is to adopt the rules as proposed.
Commissioner Spence.
Thanks, Katie. Back to IT, we talked a little bit about technology challenges. So is this going to enable us to be nimble enough then to mitigate those challenges so we can update our software for cost recovery / revenue generation?
Yes, it won't, it will allow us to continue to work through this process. IT will go through, we'll be able to do this process, but also still follow the DAS EIS oversight process to ensure that we are contracting with people that are reputable and going through the due diligence to make sure that we're checking all of the boxes and not doing something that could threaten a state system or do anything. So it'll be kind of that balance of a little bit more flexibility for the agency, but also ensuring the state systems are secure.
Go ahead. Commissioner Perillo.
Hi, Katie. Thank you so much. And thank you on this important work. I was not understanding, what are the divisions 148 and 149? What was that talking about?
They were, it felt a bit duplicative. There were some that talked about ethics and about different types of contracting that we have rolled into existing, other existing contracts. So instead of having different types of contracts outlined separately, we now will just have a small award, which is up to 100, small or direct awards, which are up to 100,000, the intermediate, which is 100 to 500,000, and then the large or formal, which is over 500,000. And those three categories have different solicitation requirements.
And I'm assuming so, but the current statute that's been adopted doesn't have a sunset on it, right?
It does
No.
not.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Yeah, go ahead. Commissioner Condor.
Well, if there's no more questions, I'd like to make a motion.
Oh, you want this one?
Well, this is based on information from my legal team. I move adoption of amendments to OAR Chapter 736, Divisions 146 and 147, and repeal of Divisions 148 and 149 to update public contracting and procurement requirements.
Does that sound right?
Sounds great.
Can I get a second?
Second?
Commissioner Azumi with the second. Just before we vote, this is super exciting. I'm very excited for this, not only to bring in revenue, but to reduce the administrative burden on small businesses in Oregon. And I feel like, there's still going to be some bureaucracy behind it, but like for a lot of these small operators and businesses and communities that want to work with OPRD and other state agencies, it's sometimes just not worth it because of the amount of bureaucracy. So this is great. This is awesome. You guys worked so hard on this. So thank you. Congratulations. And let's vote.
Hey.
All right, we have a motion and a second. So all of those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed say no. Hearing no opposition, congratulations, it's passed and let's move forward.
Oh my gosh.
Well,
And I wanted to say something about the park development division stuff as we were going through those, because every time I end up sitting next to Joel, he's like, oh my, that's amount is ridiculous. That amount's ridiculous. So we have paused, like we have permission from you to go out there, but we now will be able to use our new procurement authority and we may be able to reduce costs in those particular several of those projects, as well as many of our Go Bond projects. So that will be another way we'll look to reduce expenditures. So thank you. And I know that was fast and furious, but oh my goodness.
well, and I was here, but our procurement manager and
Bill has,
Bill Beatty and Joni House worked considerably on this project. So
they're so
really
excited.
carried a
Yeah.
lot of work for this.
Awesome.
Some exciting things for OPRD. Well, with that, I do want to just flag, that's the end of our agenda. I do want to flag to take a look at the 2026 planning calendar. We are going to vote on that in November. So take a look at those dates for when we plan to meet. And if you have any standing conflicts, just let Lisa or I know, and we can work on shifting some of those dates around. As of right now, we will likely move our November meeting to virtual. It's going to be in Salem, so folks who are able and want to go to Salem, awesome, but we are also looking for ways to save money. And so we'll most likely move that to a virtual meeting, but just be on the lookout for updates on that. And then our February meetings are also usually virtual. So that one will likely be virtual and just a one-day situation. So you'll see that reflected on the 2026 calendar. And then from there, we'll see how much money we have and what makes sense in terms of the next in-person meeting.
Yeah,
Lisa?
a couple, and thank you, Sarah, for the reminder. We got, all agency directors got a letter from the governor's office yesterday from the governor directing all agencies should slow operational, general, and lottery fund spending. Oregon's chief financial office will determine what our reduction targets are going to look like because the state is heading into a pretty significant budget shortfall with the federal funds that we're anticipating not coming in. And then the state has reduced all out-of-state travel effective yesterday. There will be all non-essential out-of-state travel for trainings and conferences suspended. So not a lot of real detail yet, but we'll do our best as a non-general fund agency to not be part of a 10 or 20% reduction exercise, because that, as you can see where we are, that would be detrimental. But so this little bit, and you guys using your tablets, great job. All these little things we're saving as much as we can to keep everything open and everybody going. So wanted to make sure you knew that because I think Dave had heard it. Several of you have heard it, but that's the gist of the letter at this moment. My guess is there'll be more after the November forecast.
Okay, any closing comments or questions before I close up the meeting? Thank you guys all for traveling here and spending time and volunteering to be a part of the commission.